say some nice things about The Hague and the Netherlands, I would like to say, hey, Germany, UK are pretty good options if you're also looking to expand to Europe. There are a couple of things that make Netherlands nicer in some aspects, and hopefully I can highlight some of those things in the presentation. So the Hague, there's we call ourselves the impact city, and we embrace the philosophy of doing good and doing business, and both of them going hand in hand. And that is something that is a little bit unique to our city. And we also have the international. It's also called the International City for Peace and Justice, because we also have the international criminal court over here, but also a lot of the UN bodies are also situated here in the city. And something that's a little bit differentiation, if I might say, but with Germany is that we have a lot more English speaking people, which makes it a little bit more easier to do business here in the Netherlands. And we also have quite a nice harbor, and in this region near the sea, there are quite a few test labs located. So if you have a business that would like to test your technology or services in this region, it's quite possible, and the government is willing to help you to do that. So this is what I was talking about. It's the seat of the Dutch government. And I believe it's also the city with the most number of embassies that you can see. I think besides London, it's the city with the most number of embassies situated within a city. And that, of course, opens up opportunities for you to work with multiple countries. And a lot of these embassies also have, dedicated startup programs as well. So if you are a Dutch entity, you will be able to work with all of those organizations and over 200 NGOs. Some of them, like HEOs, also have a big presence in India as well. Coming back to the beach again, this is a long beach of 11 kilometers. Something that the Dutch also embrace is differentiating your personal life from your work life. So they do take time to spend with their families. If you're into surfing or swimming in the sea, that's something that you could really enjoy. And it's, of course, a gateway to the European market. If you're here in the Netherlands, you have access to EU, and you can travel without a lot of restrictions, without needing like you would if you have just an Indian citizenship, you would need to get visa for every different country, but you can travel very freely. I believe it's about 28 or 30 different countries, and also do business with them. And a lot of the bigger cities, Germany, Brussels, Paris, or UK, you can travel to them mostly within 1 or 1.5 hour travel journey. We have a number of co-working spaces and labs, and recently it was also The Hague was also named as 5 of the fastest growing tech hubs in Europe. And another differentiation is that the office rents are quite low if you compare to a city like Berlin or London. Something about the Hague Business Agency. So these are our partners, together with whom we are doing the soft landing, the digital soft landing program. It's a non-profit, and these services that you see over here, including fact-finding trips, but also helping you find office spaces or helping you with taxation or anything that has to do with legal things. These are all the services that they do free of charge. So that might be nice to know. Please check out their website as well. It can be a really good starting point for you if you're looking to expand to the Netherlands. A little bit about the soft landing program itself. So Startup The Hague is the official website where you can find more information. I will also share this at the back end of the presentation. You can log into this website, and there's a possibility to go through 4 different steps. So what we're doing right now actually is we're going to put together we are putting together a program for 50 select startup and scale-ups, and you're going to get a sponsored program through which you can go through all of these 4 steps. So that will be a little bit free of charge as well. And the idea is to, usually when the situation is normal, you would come here to the Netherlands and you go through these steps. But we are developing a way, and this is, I stress, a work in progress, but we are off to a really good start, is you can do a lot of those things online. So that is what you're trying to do. So you can explore different possibilities here in the region. The second step is you can go through a couple of different trainings that are really made for international entrepreneurs to adopt their own business plan to the EU region. And also you can connect with other hubs and entrepreneurs and different connections online, and finally integrate within the ecosystem as well. So this is a little bit of a glimpse of how the website itself looks. You can find some tips about it. You can go into trainings, videos, etc. Find new investors if you'd like to do that. You can also schedule appointments with somebody who can help you online. Here's a picture of Jonathan. So this is one of the trainings that you can also see part of it online as well. And also we have highlighted the most interesting events and conferences and meetups that are happening online. And we're going to also put together some occasions which are dedicated for you to really integrate into the ecosystem as well. So this is sort of a one-stop for everything related to entrepreneurship, startups, or SMEs, if I might say that. So please go on to www.startupthehague.nl. And I think I will share these slides also with Parvati so she can pass them on to you. And there's a short form that you need to fill in. And I think within a couple of days, we get back to you about the possibility of being this one of the 50 that will be selected for this program. And hey, even if you don't get selected in that 50, we'll figure out some way to help you. So that is something that we'll try and do. Here's also my email if you would like to contact me as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aditya. Can we take some questions before we start with Jonathan?
Yeah, sure. I think I can take 1 or 2 questions. I know Jonathan needs more time for his training, so I'll give him more time for that.
Let's see if anybody have questions. Otherwise, questions? Can you see the chat?
Yes.
How much access to, do you see the question?
Yeah, I see the question. So the question is, how much access to other emerging markets is enabled by operating from The Hague? So Hari, thanks for the question. Maybe you can clarify, by emerging markets, are you talking about markets like India and countries in Africa, or are you talking about other countries in Europe?
No, I mean, if there are solutions which have been built for the Indian market, right? Is there a kind of an advantage because of existing networks and investment and other partnerships to so if you operate from Europe, then you can access both markets as well as opportunities to create new solutions in other parts of the global south? Or do you see the program which you are talking about as primarily something to encourage, innovation or solutions to be built in Europe?
Yeah, so maybe the answer is not very straightforward to this, but then there are quite some initiatives in place for enabling you to do business in both the countries, and actually a little bit more bilateral, if I might say. There is, for instance, the EU India partnership program. What they highlight is how you could do business both in India and Europe at the same time. And they have a lot of instruments, including financial help that'll enable you to do this. And then there are also initiatives. For instance, there is also the EU Africa initiative, which is doing a little bit more of the same for Africa. So if you become part of that program, you also have access to the Africa program as well. And something, I always talk about this with entrepreneurs coming from India. Sometimes the technology or service that you're working in might not be directly translatable to the European market. So something like the soft landing program or joining programs like the WorldStartup gives you this opportunity to test this feasibility as well. Did I answer your question, Hari?
Yeah, cool. So I was actually wondering about a specific case. Like suppose,
okay.
Suppose somebody built a better water solution for the Indian market, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there some kind of acceleration of creating product market fit for other markets as well, which is made easier because the Netherlands is a kind of hub for.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I get your question. So so you have this technology. If you are a Netherlands-based company, does that open up more opportunities for you in terms of market access?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And you're talking about water systems, and there's actually our own portfolio company called IDW, which is based in Karnataka. So they're establishing their office here in The Hague. And that actually opened up a lot of doors, interestingly, in Saudi and Middle East. Because apparently in the Middle East, the companies are a lot more willing to do business with a European entity than an Indian entity. So that is one example. But also what I mentioned about the embassies, Hari. So being a Dutch company allows you access to all of these embassies through which you can also enter different markets as well. And of course, just the fact that you will be located in the EU means that you will be able to do business with about 20 different countries.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, Jonathan?
I'd like to add something to that. The Hague itself, being an international city of peace, justice, and security, is the third UN city after New York and Geneva, which means that we have an enormous amount of NGOs operating in The Hague. Last count around 800. Which means there are people who have contacts with markets and developing markets and instances and initiatives all over the world that are running into each other. You can't barely walk down the street without running into somebody else who's doing something interesting somewhere.
Thanks, Jonathan. Sounds fantastic.
Cool. Parvati, maybe it's better to jump to Jonathan. I took 20 minutes, a little bit more than what I imagined.
That's great. Thank you so much, Aditya, for joining and sharing this with us.
No problem.
Great. Yeah. Thanks.
My pleasure. Everybody, there's my email. I will also drop this in the chat. So if you'd like to get in touch, please drop me a line. Thank you. Bye.
I will share the slides to all of them.
Perfect.
Thank you, Aditya. Thank you, Pravati. Yes, my name is Jonathan Talbott. I'm a communications trainer at the WorldStartup, and I have a specialty in innovation communication, particularly with communicating ideas having to do with technology, world peace, the small things. TEDx is also one of the things that I spend a lot of time doing. I work in politics. I work in generating stakeholder support. So let's talk about what's special about communicating with European stakeholders. And so if you are going to be moving into Europe, you're talking about 1/10 of the population of the world, but 1/5 of the GDP of the world. So you've got a lot of opportunities. Now, throughout this workshop, I'm going to start out by asking you some questions. So be ready to answer some questions so that I have a chance to find out more about who I'm speaking to. Secondly, I'm going to talk about 4 basic principles of communication that startups really need to spend some time thinking about. Third, I'm going to show some silly things that startups are so often doing that we can learn from some of the weird and silly mistakes that get made all the time. And finally, I've got 7 steps for communicating with stakeholders. So I got 4 basic sections here. And the first thing I want to ask, and I see that the chat is disabled, at least on my computer. So I'm not sure if the chat is going to be able to take all this, but there it goes. It comes back online. The big question I have, since we're here, we're talking about Europe and the connections in between India and Europe. What do you want to do in Europe? What do you want to be here to do? And that's an actual question. That's not a rhetorical question. So if anybody has any responses to that, please put that in the chat. What do you want to do in Europe? Doing business, okay. Sustainability challenges, all right. Sustainability challenges. Nikhil, do you want to talk about different kinds of businesses or, okay, technology exchange? Other things that you want to achieve by coming into Europe? Solving local problems. Okay, local problems in India or local problems in Europe? Networking, okay. Okay, learn, implement, sales. Partnerships. I'm writing this down so that I can look at it later because obviously none of you can actually read what I'm writing because I'm so bad at handwriting. Okay, partnerships, there's implementing, developing, selling businesses, solving local problems, okay, which we're still trying to determine, is that local problems in India or local problems in Europe? Or are they the same problems? Okay, so we're talking about sustainability challenges. We're talking about technology exchanges, networking, learning, sales, partnerships. Okay, so who do you want to be doing that with in Europe? Because Europe is about 20 different countries and a whole lot of different cultures and different languages and different ways of doing things. Who do you want to be meeting? Who do you want to have partnerships with? Who do you want to be exchanging your technology with? Who do you want to be networking with? That's another real question. Universities. All right. Startups. Anybody else want to be in touch with anybody? Who do you want to be in touch with? Okay, experts in your domain. Okay, all right, so collaborators. Companies can be leveraged for the goal of the company, but also, you know, that you could share with. Anybody looking for distribution? I won't write it down until somebody responds. Okay, you want to sell. Okay. Universities, other startups, scale-ups, experts, collaborators, distributors. Yeah, all right. I'm not going to write this one down. I'm not throwing it out there necessarily, although if you want to respond on the chat, in fact, you can send me a message on the chat at any point in time. That's fine with me. The question that you should ask is, of these people, experts and collaborators and distributors and universities, professors or researchers and other startups, why should they be working with you? What's in it for them to work with you? And so I'd like you to think about that, because it's a two-way street. It's not just, hey, hi, I'm here. Take me, I'm yours. No, it has to be something where there is a correspondence. And how are you going to let these people know that you are available and that you're interesting and that it's interesting to them? How are you going to do that? And another question that you should be asking yourself is, what is the purpose of the communication as you are talking to them, as you are sending them things? I think it's really, really important to recognize that there are as many different people who are involved, who need to have their needs met as you have your needs. Okay, I see something that's coming in. Because of the understand the global south and the context, design a solution. Okay, can accelerate and direct their investment. Okay, so there we want to talk. Somebody here would like to be talking to investment. But I don't necessarily see that that's the European context. I'm seeing that that's somebody who's working on a global matters rather than a specifically European situation, which is fine. I'm going to share some slides with you now. So what I'd like to hear in just a second is somebody to acknowledge whether they are seeing a black square on their screen. Somebody acknowledge, please. Yes, it's visible. Nice black square. All right. So a couple of years ago, I read a fantastic book about copywriting, advertising writing. And the author had a fantastic way of putting things, in particular, one thing with regard to why we're communicating and what we want to achieve. And this is the statement he made. Remember the reader and the result. So when you are sending something out, when you are communicating with people, recognize that there is somebody at the other end of that communication and that you are doing it for a reason. Recognize when you're communicating that you are doing it for a reason. And I would venture to say that you are doing your communication as a startup in order to create collaboration with another party, a stakeholder who is going to be helping you in some way, and you're going to be helping them. And that's a result of communication. So I got 4 basic principles that I want to talk through. 4 really simple little basic principles. And if you have questions, please let me know straight away. 4 basic principles. The first one is this: your audience has very little time and very little desire, at least at the beginning, to process information. So it's your job to make it easy. It's your job to recognize their situation. So if, as has happened, you send some organization an email with a PowerPoint presentation in it that is 90 slides long, recognize that your audience is not going to open it. They're not going to get past maybe slide 2. You need to recognize that they have issues and pressures themselves. Make it easy on them. Secondly, think like a tour guide. You know something that your audience doesn't know. You are taking them on a journey from a place where you know something and they don't, to the place where you both know something. And it's your job to think, how am I going to bring them along this road? Maybe it's not going to happen in one single document. Maybe it's going to take 2 or 3 or 4 contact moments to make your message come across where you can bring them along to where you want them to be. You need to make it worthwhile for them to continue reading or listening. You might even want them to ask for more. Make them want to ask for more. A third thing is this, that your audience has a specific disease. Almost every audience does, and it's called neophobia. Neophobia is being afraid of new things, and it's the thing that has kept us humans alive for millennia. It's a really good thing. That's why we don't eat the red berries on that tree, or at least we find somebody else to do it for us. You've all seen a little kid who's being given some new food, and you take it on the spoon and the parent's going, spinach, it's so healthy for you. It's going to make you big and strong. Have some. And what happens is you end up redecorating the dining room because that spoon goes flying. This is neophobia in action, and we all have it. We are all very cautious around new things. So we have mental processes that exist to keep us from absorbing new things. And I like to call that the bouncer, like in a club, that big guy with the muscles. The bouncer is keeping all the new stuff from coming into people's heads. And the bouncer is interested in 3 things, really. Is it edible? Can I eat it? Is it a good food? Then he sends it around back to the kitchen. Is it something that I can use for protection? Is it a weapon? Then I'll hold on to it and keep those ugly people away. Or is it useful to me in another way? And there are 2 uses that a bouncer usually likes. One is, can I use it in order to create more of me? Which explains an awful lot of automotive advertising. Or is it useful in order to solve a puzzle that I have? And that's what you need to be doing. You need to be able to create useful puzzle solving material for your audience. So you have to know what their problem is. And the 4th thing is this, that our job is to calmly look for collaboration. So much startup communication is too much of the wrong information, coupled with desperation disguised as aggressive overconfidence. And this happens so much, especially when somebody asks a question that might challenge a basic assumption of the startup. And then the startup goes on attack. Our job when we are communicating is to look for collaboration, to look for teamwork, and to create that. And so we really need to work towards creating collaboration. And much startup communication has actually done exactly the opposite. So let me show you some of the silly things that happen when startups are perpetuating the same slides over and over. For example, I'm going to show you a number of slides that I either borrowed directly from startups that don't exist anymore, or that I copied from a lot of startups that I've seen. And these are the types of things that people do over and over and over. Now, the first principle here with the silly things is that nobody really likes an overdog. Nobody likes arrogant people, but we tend to show materials that are arrogant. And you've seen this slide. You might have even had it in your own slide deck. There's this slide. We all love this one because you get to show your competitors over here. Now, I'm illustrating this today by a company that I've created that's called Simply Amazing Us. And simply amazing. Us has designed a superhero, something having to do with superheroes. And what we're talking about here is the superheroes that can't fly and that aren't particularly strong. So yeah, Spider-Man's, he's human, right? He can be injured. He's not immortal. And Batman, yeah, Batman's just rich. Yeah. And Iron Man, he can fly. That's pretty good. But, Aquaman really can't. And over here, we've got Superman who can fly and he is strong, and Wonder Woman who is a bit immortal, but she can't fly. Now then look at that. Oh, here we are. Now, how many of you have seen that slide before in a startup deck? Pretty much every time. Well, the problem is that there's no mystery there. We've all seen it before, and it's in fact a pack of baloney. Now, you've also seen this slide show up in startup communication. This is where you create a whole bunch of phony categories that you're going to be able to show how wonderful you are and how awful the rest of the people are who are out there. This is outrageously arrogant. Now, if you look at it from the principle of what are you trying to achieve, and if what you are trying to achieve is, would you like to work with us? You might need to reframe the way that you communicate. Nobody likes an overdog, but if you are presented with an underdog, we are like, hey, maybe I can help them out. Maybe I can be involved with this. Maybe I want to be part of this team. Where we are now, and our plan for 2021. This is the same information presented in an underdog way that helps your audience to say, hey, I'd like to get involved with these guys, instead of, hey, they're perfect, we don't need them. Nobody likes extraneous information. Nobody likes the stuff that they don't need to know. And here is an actual slide from a startup that doesn't exist anymore, where they were presenting information about their partners and potential partners. Potential partners. That's like just names. That's like extra people. I don't know what they were thinking there. This competition slide again. This is way too much information. This is extraneous information. This is stuff I don't need to know in order to make a decision to work with you. This is an important number to recognize, 7 plus or minus 2. And it comes from some research on short-term memory. Human beings can handle 7 plus or minus 2 pieces of discrete information at one time. That's it. Think about it for a second. 7 plus or minus 2 pieces of individual information you can hold on to. So if you're really relaxed and you're really focused, you can hold on to 9 things at one time. And if you're not so focused, that's 5. In fact, it's worse than that, because everybody's got extra stuff going on in their heads all the time. In fact, if you're looking at this on a screen right now, there's probably about 5 other things that are taking your attention away from this particular webinar. So we try to encourage people when we're doing communication workshops to only use 3 things at a time. And I'll show you a little bit why. The other thing is we like to have it where people only spend 3 seconds before they have to move on to something else, because 3 seconds is the amount of attention span you can count on at a moment before you really, really engage something. Now I'm going to show you a slide now that I hope that you process in under 3 seconds. And if you don't, you're probably dead. So this one is an easy to read piece of information. No extraneous information whatsoever right here. This one, however, I do think has killed some people. Because you don't know what time it is when you pull up to the stop. And what if it's a holiday and not Sunday or Saturday? And I don't know if I can turn left or right, or I don't know what's going on. Now, probably you've all pulled up to an airport at some point in time. This is usually when we have no stress in our lives, right? You're going at a high speed, you're having some intense conversation because you saved all of the stuff you were going to talk about until the very last minute. And you're driving into the airport and you're trying to figure out where you're supposed to go. Now, the people in airports still haven't figured out this 3-second rule, or actually the 1-second rule of figuring out how to get you to where you want to go really quickly, because here you are driving down the road at around 110 kilometers an hour, and you're trying to figure out what is the difference between terminal D and terminal E and terminal C, and whether we're flying domestically or internationally, and which airline again, I don't remember. Too much information. Here again, my favorite slide, if you haven't gathered yet, too much information. Again, way too much information. You cannot process this in under 3 seconds. And it is way more information than anybody needs to have in order to make a decision to work with you or not. So when you see those slides, stop and try to figure out what decision do you want your audience to make. Nobody likes extraneous information, so make choices for simplicity. Simple slides that just show an easy message that we can figure out without having to work too hard because we don't have time and we don't have energy. Nobody likes seeing dumb stuff. One of the stupidest slides I ever see in slide decks is this one right here, because all it says is, did you notice that we have a team? Now, you could do worse. You could use, say, the top slides that come from Google on Teams. This is an image of a team, number 1, and this is number 2 from Google at the time that I did this. Or you could just show some dolls talking about our team. That's almost as good as that slide I just showed you. Here's what Microsoft thinks you should show for Teams. I think this is ridiculous. What you should be talking about is, what kind of a team are you? What function does the team serve? How do the individuals work together in order to create the result that is necessary? What are you doing there? I got another silly thing that I see way too much. And I don't think it's nearly as impressive as people think it is. And it's this one, where they're talking about the global market and the European market and the accessible market and all these different market things they show in the circles, and they're supposed to get people excited about it. What I see when I see this slide is somebody, an organization that has no idea how they're going to access their market. They're just trying to make me salivate over a big number. How can everything that you show contribute to your audience deciding to help you on your goal? Show meaningful information. At this moment, I'm going to take a second of any of the things that I've gone through right now. If there's anything you want clarity on, anything you want some help on, anything you want information on, let me know. I'm going to take a sip of water, and while I'm taking a sip of water, I'm going to be looking at the chat. And I take it by the fact that I'm seeing nothing on the chat. Oh, there, how the information should be presented. Well, thank you. I'm glad that you introduced my next section for me. Anybody else? I'm thinking that Nikhil's the only one still awake. Oh, wait, there's Vignesh. +1. Oh, you're agreeing. Well, it's good that I've made you interested in trying to figure out what we can do instead of what we shouldn't do. So for Nikhil and Vignesh, and the other 5 people who are still awake, are we ready to move on? Infographics. Great. I will address some infographics. I'll write that down right now in order to make sure that we talk about infographics in a minute. Cool. Cool. And underdogs being as less confident. Yes. Okay. Actually, I'm going to address that underdog thing right now. Yes, there's a fine line in between being overconfident and being seen as being ridiculous. And that's what you're afraid of, I think, by that question. Is being an underdog a problem? I think a strong underdog is not a problem. I think that an arrogant overdog is an enormous problem. And I think we see too much of that in startup world. What I would like to see is people who are asking questions rather than making statements. So let me give you an example of underdog behavior, or what I see as underdog behavior: collaborative communication. There was a big study done on pitching in Hollywood a couple of years ago, a number of years ago, and they were trying to figure out what makes a great Hollywood pitch. And they determined that the Hollywood pitch where somebody walks in and says, this is going to be a combination of Lord of the Rings and the Terminator, and it's going to have Michael Douglas in it, and it's going to be amazing this way, that tends to get turned down because that's overconfidence, that's over arrogance. The opposite is when you have somebody who comes in and pitches a movie saying, well, I think it's going to be like a combination of Lord of the Rings meets the Terminator, and I'm not really sure what kind of stars we might have in it. So that's the two sides. And I think that's your concern about being an underdog, is the second model there. There's the third model, and it goes like this. So I have an idea for a film, and I'd like to have your opinion on it. It would be the Lord of the Rings meets Terminator, and I was thinking that we could have a star, someone like Michael Douglas, who's performing in it. What do you think of that? Should we make it more drama, or should we make it more comedy? And at that moment, that engagement creates co-creation, which makes your project so much more possible of having any kind of result than either of those two other models. And that's what I'm talking about being an underdog, is being possible to succeed, but open to communication. Does that help? Nice. Thank you for the clear. Okay, so how do we design for alignment with people from a different ecosystem who we don't know much? Ah, yes, for designing pitches. Yeah, okay. I'm going to put that one on the side here, find my green pen, and put down the research thing. So, okay, so Hardy, I'm going to come back to the designing for alignment with people you don't know much about. Don't let me end without that, and I'm going to come back to the infographics. But as promised, we're going to move on over to 7 ideas that are going to help you communicate to your new European partners, the ones that you want to have. And I have 7 things that they could be 7 slides, but I'm really careful not to say that they're slides, because they could be more like sections, because sometimes you have information that needs to spill over into maybe 2 or 3 slides, and sometimes you can combine these things. And so it could be 11 slides, it could be 5 slides, it could be pages in a book, a flyer, it could be sections on your web page. But these 7 ideas are going to be useful for being able to communicate the information that you would like to communicate to a new partner. And the first thing is to recognize that you should be starting out with an introduction of some kind, all right? Can't just throw yourself in, you have to start somehow. Okay, this would be an introductory slide. I think this is a lousy introductory slide, just showing a logo, because you are missing an opportunity. The opportunity is to do some framing. It's to take people from something that is unknown and show them that it is something that they could know. You've got to move them along. And the way that you're going to do framing is simply by answering these 2 questions. We do this for these people. Suddenly your audience is like, ooh, I understand who these guys are. Now, the we do, or we sell, or we make, that's an important thing. And I think you should recognize that you should probably start with a category rather than starting with we make little transistor devices. We once had a meeting with a startup that was not going particularly well. Fortunately, it turned out well in the end. But at the during this meeting, a colleague of mine just got so frustrated. He says, what you do is you're actually just making plastic boxes with electronics in it. And we all took a moment and we realized that's what so many manufacturers do. You just make plastic boxes with electronics in it. And in fact, this is a plastic box with electronics in it. It happens to be relatively expensive, but that's what a lot of us are doing. That's a category that might be useful to recognize. So, for example, we make plastic boxes with electronics in them for nurses. What we've already done is we've identified category and we've identified the audience for that category. We make plastic boxes with electronics in them for doctors, for airplane pilots, for consumers, for shopkeepers. We make a platform for shopkeepers. We do this for these people. Now, we may want to refine this a little bit more. We may want to refine this and make it, instead of plastic boxes of electronics, what kind of plastic boxes? We make remote temperature sensors for nurses. But that's not quite enough yet for your introduction. For your introduction, we need to add one more phrase to the whole thing here. We do this for these people so they can. And this is where your value proposition comes into play, or the benefits that your audience gets from doing or buying your thing or using your thing. We make remote temperature sensors for nurses so they can efficiently treat emergency. So what you need to do in the first step is introduce your company, the category, the market, and the value proposition. And you do it very simply with the we do this for these people so they can. The reason why you do this in your first section is that what you want to have happen is whoever is looking at it says two things. First is, I want to look at page 2. And the second is, hey, Joe, you got to look at this. These guys are doing this for these people. That's your people. And suddenly your shareability went out the window, just rocketed. Okay. Second thing that you want to do, the second level that you want to take your audience on, that second page, the second click, the second slide, is to introduce the problem. Now, the way you're not going to introduce the problem, we've already established this. You're not going to introduce the problem by showing how huge the market could possibly be. And you're not going to introduce the problem by showing the competition. You're going to introduce the problem very simply. Now, this is almost a reasonable introduction to the problem, but I don't even like this one, even though I made it. The way I really always advise startups to introduce their problem is like this. There is a comet coming towards the planet. It's going to kill everyone unless we do something immediately. Now, what I just did. Sorry, I missed that? Oh, maybe that wasn't intended for me. What I just did by introducing the comet coming towards the planet is going to kill everybody unless we do something about it is we introduced the problem, who has the problem, so therefore the market, and that there is an urgency to the problem, to solving the problem. So let's talk about how you might do this yourself. And I like to bring in the comet problem because it's big and visible, but everybody can identify their comet situation. Comet QXZ3, whatever it is, will be colliding with the Earth on the 5th of January. And it will be killing roughly 7.2 billion people. Now, that is a very, very, very clear statement at the beginning. And we should probably do something quickly. It would be something I would never write down, even though it's kind of funny to say right now. But what we should, I'm sorry, somebody's phone keeps on being unmuted. Thank you very much. What we should probably do is actually include a little bit more information as to actually how the problem is currently being solved. There is a problem in the world that these people have. There is an urgency to solving it. And currently the situation around solving that problem is not very good. We have now identified that you are a very smart startup. And we have also identified that, I'm sorry, somebody has now decided to draw on my slides. Thank you very much. One of the issues that we are trying to face is recognizing early on that your audience recognizes that you are for real, that you're smart and you've done your research. And this means that showing that you have competition is fine. Showing where this market sits right now is great. And showing what kinds of problems exist and you can quantify those problems, that is fantastic. Now, the next thing you're going to need to do, the next section you should talk about is then what happens to happen because of this comet coming towards the Earth, because of this problem. What we need is we need to introduce Superman. And what we need to be able to do is introduce that you have a team that is equipped to solve this problem. We've already seen that this doesn't cut it. This is just a bunch of labels and a bunch of pictures of people doing nothing. What we need to do is show your team in some manner, and to talk about your team in some manner where the reputation, experience, diversity, connections are demonstrable. We are for real and we're prepared to move. Now, so I had a look at a Hollywood movie and saw what they were going to do about how to deal with comets their way, or asteroids in this case. And then I saw, how would we then take this and use this to show for a startup the information that your audience needs to know in order to help figure out whether they want to be a partner with you. We are deep core drillers recruited by NASA to save the planet. Our founders came together during their first venture in 2016 when they were 18. Now, this tells us that there is a founder story behind this and that they were students together. But that first startup failed. Suddenly we have experience. They created a more diverse team, always good, bringing experienced people and participating in a partnership with something. So we're telling a bit of a story about this startup. After 2 years of consistent growth in India, we're now planning an entry into similar sector, okay, whatever sector you're in the Netherlands. Not just an entry into the Netherlands, but entry into a specific market group in the Netherlands, followed by Germany and France. We are qualified to solve this problem because of this, this, and this. Okay, now you're finally ready to talk about the thing that you really want to be talking about. And that is your solution, because everybody wants to talk about the solution. What you need to do is you need to demonstrate that your solution is indeed a solution. And it's a solution to a real problem that you've already identified, and that you've got real people who are working hard to make that happen. Now, we have to introduce your solution as what we call the magic object. Again, movies are great. Storytelling there. Yeah, because we got the magic wand, or we've got the magic ring to solve all the problems, or we've got the Excalibur. Now, introducing your project as being a solution to the problem that will help other people is incredible. What you shouldn't do here is to only talk about the features. You need to talk about the features in relationship to something else to create a response. Our flagship Excalibur sword is made from, okay, you got features, a grip and a forged steel and razor sharp edge. And oh, did I tell you that we had a patent? Look at that, there we go. And it's useful when you're fighting against any known dragon species. All right, so suddenly we talk about features and usage, but that's not quite enough. Not just the solution itself, but we would like to know something about how, since I'm supposed to be your partner, how you're going to bring that to the market, or what you are going to be selling it, or how I'm going to help you sell it. We are selling Sword as a service. Excalibur comes as a weekly, monthly, or yearly subscription. Aha! Now I know something that more about you. You're not just technological people. You're not just the nerds. You're also good business people. Oh yeah, and you're selling something really cool. We have created this and we sell it in this way. All right, so that's 4 different ideas that we've got. We've hit the introduction, we've hit the problem, we've hit the team, we've hit the solution. Now, there's a 5th thing that I really want to, it could not emphasize more. And it is this, that you need to ask for what you need. You need to ask for what you need. And that means you have to understand what you need. And so many startups are so focused on how perfect they are that they forget that the reason why they're communicating is to ask a question. So ask that question. In order to move quickly, we need to hire an HR executive. We need to have a new headquarters in Europe. So we're looking for recommendations for office space and a reliable new core team member. But you know, that's not just good enough, because have you started to understand that I like to double things up? I like to think about the purpose behind them. The purpose behind asking is to get something. But the thing that's going to motivate your audience to help you is to understand that you are part of an environment. So understand that you are, and they are, understanding an element of the thing, and this question is part of that. We're trying to achieve something in this market in this way. In order to do that, we're going to need some help. and you could help us. So here's what we need help with. The current environment looks like this, and we're going to need help with this. After you've given us a question, you can tell us a little bit more about how you're going to deal with the business issues that are ahead of. And you can tell us by telling us what you've done and how you're going to enter that new market. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because, number one, that's outside of the scope of what I'm talking about, but also because every different company has a very individual way of approaching and entering a market, and there's different ways of describing your marketing plan. However, we've sold this much to these kinds of clients. We have plans to do this type of growth in the future, in the next 12 months. Here are the steps that we want to take when we're entering the European market. The first step is finding new partners. Second one is authorizing a distributor and setting up a manufacturing base. Whatever those steps are going to be, it is so useful to know that you are reasonable people, that you are not naive, that you understand that sales is how businesses thrive, and that you are working hard to make that happen, and that this is part of that strategy. The seventh thing that I always want to make sure is communicated is the value proposition. Make sure that your audience does hear very clearly not only the features of your solution, but what it's good for, how useful it is. We make computers or cars or hospital patients or whatever safer or easier to use, well, not the patients, but more comfortable. And this adds value. Show us that value proposition in parallel to that problem that you had shown before. But I'm not happy with this. I'm not happy with this as an ending. This is not a clear and clean and solid ending. Including a call to action in that ending will increase results immeasurably. Would you like to join us bringing this value proposition to the market? So I've shown you 7 different ideas here, and I've shown you various things back and forth. I'm going to do a little recap of taking you through these slides one more time, but in the clean versions and not any of the dirty stuff that I showed you before. So let's start with an introduction that includes a do-who, what we do, for whom, and what they get out of it. And that gives us an opportunity to spread our message. Then we introduce the problem and the size of the problem and the urgency of solving the problem along with the current state of affairs. And this shows your audience that you have done your research and that you are a trustable group of people. How do we know you're a trustable group of people? Because you're telling us that you're a trustable group of people, because you're smart people who have a lot of experience, who have done certain things and have some ideas on how you're going to move forward. Of course, you've created a really, really cool solution to that problem. Okay, yeah, I know that my problem and my solution here aren't the same, but we've created a really cool solution, but we're also recognizing that selling that solution is one of the main functions of business. So we have some questions for you, and we know that we're part of an environment that you're part of, and we want to work together, and this is what we need help with. And here's how we're going to move forward to create this value proposition into the world. And I really hope that you are going to help us. So those are my 7 things. I've got them put into a PDF. Would anybody like to have it? All right, so that was a loaded question. Let me just send it over in this chat. You're about to get a PDF sent to you with the 7 steps that I've just gotten for you from what we do at the World Startup Factory, or the World Startup Global Entrepreneurship Platform. We do a lot with working on how to communicate much better your value propositions and your communications of your startup in ways that make sense to the audience that you're trying to reach. At this point, I want to know if I have actually addressed the infographics and research questions, or if you would like some more on that. Thanks, Nikhil. Hadi, you were asking a question about designing for alignment with different ecosystems that you don't know much about. Do you want some more information from me?
Yeah, I mean, I think if it's like a startup pitching to an investor, I think like this template works. But I really was wondering, how do you get like strategic depth in the pitch, or do you need to do that for first pitches at all?
Okay, so you're asking about creating strategic depth with communicating with certain types of stakeholders who would be maybe an NGO partner?
Yeah. I mean, I think, is there anything more we can do than just going to their website and seeing what they have funded before and who have they partnered with before and unpacking their model maybe?
Yeah. First off, yes, of course, the website's a great place to start. Various social media platforms as well, following what they're up to, what kinds of things they're sharing, what kinds of things that they are interested in communicating. Some organizations are better at that than others, so hopefully you're working with one that's better at communicating. The next step, of course, is to find a way of finding an actual individual in the organization, which is often not as difficult as you might think, but finding the right person can be difficult. So you have to find ways of finding out if you're talking to the right person, and that's by asking a lot of questions. The next level, of course, is you're going to send a cold email. Hopefully you find somebody who knows somebody, which warms up your email. But you send an email, hey, I was recommended by so-and-so to be in touch with you, or we've been working in the same sector, so I'd like to get to know you, or we're coming to The Hague next week, and I'd like to set up a meeting with you. Those are all those things that you're going to do, which is primary research. Then you're going to, of course, in that email, you're going to include this document. 7 sections of things that are why these people should meet with you. Why are you interested? All you've done with this is you've baited a big hook. Now, you know that you're working with an NGO in this case, and that they're based doing things in sub-Saharan Africa, and that you are working in water, and they're working in plants. Tailor make one of those slides into how the water and plant situation combine. The next thing is, of course, you walk into the meeting and then you start asking all kinds of questions, and that's where your research is going to happen. I'm not sure if I'm helping you, Hadi, but that's the set of steps I would take.
Yeah, you are. I mean, I think it is very helpful, and I think like it's a process. So not getting shot down at stage 1 of the process because of silly miscommunications, I think, is my takeaway from this presentation. But it helps a lot.
I could, if that's what you take away, I'm extraordinarily happy. Thank you, Hadi. Yeah, recognizing that the other side is really, they have their needs too, and seeing how you can match that. Super. Thank you. I'm seeing a question coming from Nikhil with respect to this point. Yes, on websites, same story. You can use a lot of the material that we were just talking about, that list of 7 questions, statements that we made here that's in the PDF. Those could be also points that you can make on your website. If you take a look at, I'm going to try to think of, now I can't think of right now a great website, but really good websites make it very clear on the splash page what they do and for whom, and which audience it is, and how that audience is going to be helped. And then they identify the problem really quite quickly after that. And only after that they introduce their solutions directly, because they know that if they just throw the toys right at the beginning, unless they're really hot technological toys that everybody needs to have, you have to tease a little bit. You have to identify that there's a pain in the world that needs to be solved, and that the current solutions aren't so great. And then you move on. The other points, depending on what type of website and what you're trying to achieve with the website, is it meant for general public? Is it meant for specific target audiences? You want more or less of various information. I hope that helps you, Nikhil. And then somebody asked about infographics. And I think that the 7 ± 2 is a very important thing to recognize when you're showing an infographic. That anything that requires somebody to really sit down and, if you're my age, put on a different pair of glasses and really study it is not the best thing in initial conversation. It might be great after 5 times of going back and forth, and then you can send the information and they want to spend more time learning about your thing. And if they do want, they will ask for it. But a quick infographic which shows, say, the problem relationship to the current solutions and the number of people who are affecting, that could be really great as long as it's one of the quick ones and not one of the ones that requires us to figure out a mountain full of material. Does that help the infographics question? I don't remember who was asking it. Ishita. Are there other questions for me right now? Because you've heard a lot from me, I haven't heard as much from you.
Jonathan, we also have this live streaming in YouTube, and I have questions from there. Can I ask now?
Oh, please be our intermediate.
So how important is, because you mentioned in one of the slides about patents, so is it very important to have a patented technology?
I don't think it's important to have the patented technology, but if you do have a patent, it is really useful to tell people that you have one. Patented technology just means that somebody else believes in you. And that they believe that this is something that is, and it also says that you have intellectual property and you're an owner of it and that you're potentially bankable in that way. But if you have something that's not patentable, or if you've chosen not to patent it and you want to do open source with it or whatever, that's up to you. But that's nice to communicate as well. But something like, hey, I have a patent. Oh, we've already had Series A, or we've sold 5 billion, whatever. Those are pieces of information you shouldn't keep secret. Any other questions there, Putta?
What are the biggest barriers of entry into European market?
Biggest barriers of entry? Well, that's a fantastic question. I'm gonna think about an answer for this. Biggest barriers of entry into the European market. I think probably the biggest barrier to entry to the European market, any European market, because we're talking about 20 or 30 markets in this case, is that people don't believe that you can do it. I think that you have somebody coming from outside. There's neophobia again. It's something new. It's something different. We're not used to it. We're not used to doing business this way with these types of people. It's disruptive. It's going to change things. Those are barriers into doing business that are as extreme here as they are anywhere else. And I think perhaps even more in Europe, because Europe is the old world and we're used to doing things our way. And asking us to change takes a little bit of leverage, takes a little bit of push. I think that would probably be the biggest barrier. Does that help?
A follow-up question from them, is language a barrier?
Language being a barrier. Yeah, I think it is, but it isn't. I think there are definitely markets and situations and sectors where it is a barrier. I would say, for example, super die-hard machinery, the kind where people's hands are oily and greasy, tends to be where people are not interested in speaking multiple languages. However, a lot of higher level technological advances, intergovernmental solutions, NGO related things, international related global initiatives, language is not an issue at all. Everybody speaks English.
There are a few questions in chat. Can you check? Yeah.
I'm seeing some. I'm seeing a circular economy and ag tech is very advanced in NNL. Yes. How can we use the World Startup Network to get access to networking opportunities? Well, that's easy. Send us a message saying who are you, what you're interested in, and set up a meeting with me. Or not with me, but with the people at World Startup. That's great. We work a lot with ag tech. We're extraordinarily interested in circular economy. And if you've ticked those boxes already, saying, hey, I'm a circular ag tech startup, and I'm interested in finding out what I can do, you've already got somebody's attention at World Startup, and they'll be back in touch immediately. So that's easy. So I hope Zoe's going to be writing an email in about 5 minutes. Hadi, how good is the academy/startup world connection in Europe? Do educational institutions? Oh boy, do educational institutions play a role in market innovation? They definitely do. I'm sitting in The Hague, just down the road from the Delft, they say TU Delft, Delft Institute of Technology, which has an extraordinarily large startup scene. The Leiden Biocenter Park is to the north of me, where there is an extraordinarily large amount of spin-offs from the university, from the medical center, in terms of bio and medical-based research and going into startups, including one of the early innovations that is enabling COVID vaccines came from Leiden Bioscience Park. We have in the Netherlands as well, the University of Wageningen, which is an agricultural institute, or is associated with agriculture technology, which is pushing out an enormous amount of usage of drones and unmanned growing platforms and vertical gardening into the business world. So yeah, Heidi, I hope that's somewhat the question you're asking, is that do the educational institutes play a role in market innovation? Extraordinarily.
Awesome. Thanks, Jonathan. That was very informative.
Yeah. In fact, I can even tell you that between the University of Leiden and the Delft University of Technology and the business school at the Erasmus University in Rotterdam, so those are 3 schools which are approximately 45 minutes driving away from each other, well, an hour on the train away from each other. They are setting up consortia where the business students and the technology students and the medical students are working together to create startup ideas and execute them properly, with the business already incorporated in the technology idea at the beginning.
And that sounds amazing, Jonathan, because I think like this conference especially is about how do we develop our societies using data and data entrepreneurship. And, I think, like businesses to, play such an important role. And it's great to see that the academy is like playing a role in making a great environment for that to happen.
It definitely is. It's. I mean, I wouldn't say always, but there are definitely. Yeah. I mean, one of the strongest innovators for keyhole surgery is happening at the TU Delft at the moment, where they're creating reusable devices for doing laparoscopic surgery on knees. Or appendicitis victims. So, and with the idea of how do we keep things sterile in non-sterile environments so that it can expand into sub-Saharan Africa, where there are fewer hospitals per population, so that people who have appendicitis can actually live. And so these things are happening here, definitely. I'm sure they're happening absolutely everywhere, but certainly is awareness during the academy here. Parvati, are there other questions from the YouTube?
I'm checking. Some of them you already answered. No, I think we covered the questions. But here, if anybody have more questions for Jonathan, please. I mean, you can also unmute and ask yourself. That's good.
That's very true. Unmuting and asking yourself, as long as you do it one at a time, is fine with me.
Yeah, or you can type in whatever is more comfortable for you.
Absolutely. I'm going to stop sharing these slides because they're no longer of value to you.
Hello, Jonathan. Nikhil this side.
Hello?
Nikhil, can you speak a bit louder?
Is it okay now?
Yes.
Okay. So I wanted to ask, the presentation and pitch deck was really nice and gives some informative stuff to me.
Thank you.
I wanted to know, like, mostly people what look for or investor look for, they look for a MVP to get funded, and some people got seed funding before the MVP. So what you prefer, if one choose to go for funding before making a MVP or developing a MVP? So what should you suggest for such persons, whether they should go or they should have MVP mandatory?
Okay, you're asking an investor question, and I'm going to be very